Let's dive into an old saying that claims truth is more confusing than fiction. It might sound silly at first, but there's a logical aspect to it. Believe me, I know this from personal experience. My name was Tomoki, and the story I'm about to tell might sound unbelievable, but it's true. I was murdered by someone I considered my own sister. It's going to sound crazy, but I reincarnated. Yes, I really reincarnated. Here's how it all began. One day, a coworker named Kiritsuba invited me for a drink. As the night progressed, she got drunk, and I decided to take her home to rest. Still in the mood for a drink, I went to a nearby store to buy some alcohol. On my way home, I saw a girl I knew. Her name was Krimin. She may have appeared like a stalker, but I thought of her as my sister. I called out to her, but she didn't utter a word, and it gave me a bad feeling. As I approached her, I received a stab wound in my stomach. Honestly, it didn't hurt, and I never thought it would kill me. But I soon realized that Krimin was using an electrified knife called nanakari. I fell to the ground, paralyzed by the electricity, and Krimin kept stabbing me. Her face was soaked in blood, and she looked completely unrecognizable. At that moment I died, and then I revived. I first thought it had been a terrible nightmare, or maybe the alcohol had played tricks on my mind. But no, I had indeed died. Day 1. Waking up was strange. My eyelids felt heavy. The first thing I saw was an ugly man with green skin. He did some strange things to me and told me that I was born again. On the second day, in the midst of confusion, I tried to move my body, but it wouldn't respond. I looked around and realized I was in a cave surrounded by ugly green babies that resembled goblins. When I finally moved a hand, I noticed it looked like theirs, and the truth hit me. I'd been reborn as a goblin. It was enough to make me want to cry. On the third day, I discovered that goblins grow rapidly. Overnight, I became the size of a school-going child, though this body was much weaker than my previous one. I knew I had to behave like the others and tried to act as naturally as possible. They are beasts of nature, forced to develop quickly to survive. I pushed myself to the limit, training my weak body, falling from exhaustion, but it became easier to move. On the fourth day, they sent me to find my food, and at only 4 days old, I went hunting. I teamed up with another goblin named Kichai, and as we searched for food, we talked about various topics, becoming friends in the end, and so my new life as a goblin began. The world of goblins is cruel, and I soon learned some harsh truths. Since goblins have an extremely low birth rate, they kidnap and rape human women. One day, while searching for food, we discovered an abandoned cave filled with several women. They appeared to have lost all hope, but it was clear they still wanted to live. The sight was deeply troubling, and all I could do was pray for them. Eventually, we found a one-horned rabbit. I quickly explained the plan to Kichai, my goblin friend, and we launched ourselves at it, hunting it down successfully. This team hunting thing was more fun than I expected, but Kichai didn't quite grasp the moral aspect of teamwork. I had to scold him lightly to teach him the importance of sharing. After the hunt, I removed the horn from the rabbit as a trophy and symbol of success. But let's put all this aside for a moment and talk about a strange voice in my head that called me Goblin Ruth. I assume that's my new name given by the ugly old man. I didn't like it, so I decided to use my original name instead. I also used the rabbit's horn as a makeshift weapon, planning to find something better later. When Kichai woke up, my conscience began to invade me, and to ease my guilt, I shared part of the loot with him. He was more grateful than ever, and we enjoyed the rabbit together. In the end, I'd eaten meat, acquired a new weapon, and made a new friend. Not a bad day at all. On the 5th day, I was hunting again and encountered another horned rabbit. Using my horn weapon, I ended its life and noticed that its horn was slightly bigger than the previous one. The voice in my head mentioned my name once more, and it even told me that I'd learned a new skill called escaping. It all began to make sense. Before my death, I was an Esper, a person with special abilities. My unique talent was absorption, meaning I could eat anything, regardless of how hard or toxic, and it would become harmless inside my body. Moreover, absorbing things granted me new abilities and strength. There were rules like having to eat creatures within 12 hours of their death to absorb their abilities, but this gift made me strong. In my old life, I'd eaten many things, including evil espers, and had numerous powers. Now in this new life, I'd lost all those abilities, but retaining the absorption skill felt like a stroke of luck. Armed with this knowledge, Kichai and I continued to hunt, hoping to recover my abilities soon. I found that the escaping skill allowed me to run faster. After hunting and eating more, we finally felt full, and Kichai started to admire me. He seemed to understand that I would be the leader of our group. For day 6, we met a goblin named Gebumi. She admired us for having hunted horned rabbits, an activity that must be challenging for someone of her tender age. When I inquired about her diet, she explained that she had been surviving on tree nuts, a necessity since others her age had starved or been impaled by the horns of the rabbits they tried to hunt. It might sound ludicrous, but considering that a newborn goblin is often thoughtless and weak, it can happen. I observed that others were starting to use weapons like us, imitating her actions, which didn't seem like a bad thing. Meanwhile, Gebumi lavished praise and admiration on me for being strong and intelligent. Her attention was unfamiliar to me, as I'd never been popular among goblins before. While I was pondering this, Kitchen mentioned his hunger, so we decided to go hunting again. This time, I invited Gebumi to join us to learn to hunt and move beyond those unappetizing nuts. She hugged me and started crying, but then quickly smiled and agreed. We managed to hunt several horned rabbits that day. On day 7, when we woke up from the rain, we refrained from hunting. Instead, we began to craft our weapons, focusing on knives to obtain good skins. Utilizing a stone from the river, we were able to make knives that would allow us to create leather garments, replacing our crude loincloths. More goblins our age gathered to watch, but we ignored them and continued with our work, eventually producing 3 knives. By the afternoon, Gebumi, Kichai, and I were brainstorming new hunting strategies. We were interrupted by an old goblin, who I found out was 20 years old, making him the eldest among us. I paused our planning to listen to him, absorbing his wisdom about our world. His tales were fascinating, especially regarding why our parents weren't around. The reality of the strongest surviving was inspiring, though 20 years seemed a short lifespan. I was left pondering whether goblins procreate out of skill or necessity due to their brief lives. When day 8 started, we decided to test our new hunting plan. Although we faced several threats, we managed to triumph. The strategy turned out to be highly effective, with Gebumi providing support with a sling stick I had crafted, Kichai at the front, and myself in the center. The formation resulted in a substantial food haul, but Gebumi and Kichai were not satisfied and hunted 2 more rabbits. Examining our loot, we found a raccoon with armor. Unable to pierce it with my horn, I realized that its shell could be useful for crafting armor. Consuming it, I learned a new ability called Shell. We also found a 7-color bat. Although I couldn't absorb any ability from it, I did feel stronger. I speculated that if I ate another, I might gain some skills. On that same day, we found a highlight among our hunted creatures, which I named Night Viper. It had incredibly tough skin, but I managed to decapitate it, and we shared the body. Eating it, my hands became paralyzed momentarily, but I ended up learning 5 new abilities from the Viper. I kept the Viper's head to extract its poison from my weapons, confident that it wouldn't harm me thanks to my newly acquired poison absorption and tolerance abilities. Day 9 brought a new opportunity to create armor and craft necessities such as needles and silk. When Kitcha complained of hunger, I recommended he eat insects and gave him a shield. I also made a garment and necklace for Gebumi from the colorful wings and fangs of the 7-colored bats, and she loved it. She jumped towards me and hugged me, thanking me for it. On day 10, we resumed our hunting, encountering familiar creatures but avoiding higher-level monsters. I discovered that my level was 86, while Kitcha's was 78 and Gebumi's 55. Grandpa explained about ranking up to higher species like Hobgoblin or Ogre at level 100. Day 11 was filled with excitement as we stumbled into a cave filled with 7-colored bats. Gebumi went ahead while Kichai and I fought off the bats. We killed 30 bats and I consumed 10, learning abilities like echolocation, which helps me scan the terrain and locate animals to ambush. Day 12 ended with us returning home at nightfall, weary but grateful for our night eye ability. Our daily routine had become dynamic and thrilling, filled with discovery, growth, and unexpected challenges. Our hunts were about learning, evolving, and forging relationships in a world full of surprises. During the night, I was awakened by the presence of 6 goblins my age armed with sticks, clearly intent on finishing me off. However, thanks to my poisoned horn, I managed to kill one, while the others were subdued with tranquilizing poison and a well-deserved beating. My actions drew the attention of more goblins, but no punishment followed since such savage acts were apparently normal for adults. The real problem arose when Gebumi discovered the attempt on my life, becoming so furious that she nearly killed one of the goblins. I had to sedate her to calm her down and put her to sleep. I took the opportunity to consume the corpse of the goblin I had killed, dragging it outside and making sure I was unobserved. Day 13 dawned, and Kichai, Gabumi, and I ventured into the deepest part of the forest until we reached the foot of a mountain. Here we found a new prey, a monster similar to goblins but taller and with the head of a pig. After chasing it and ensuring it was alone, I soaked a stone with my poison and gave it to Gabumi to strike its eyes. Blinded and weak, the pig monster was attacked by Kichai and eventually killed by us. This was our first successful orc hunt, and I found it tasted very similar to pork. Among the many skills I learned from consuming it was the orc language, leading me to speculate about the possibility of similar abilities to speak with humans. After hunting more than usual, we returned home, and I decided to share our food with the same goblins who attacked me the day before. They were likely motivated by hunger, and I felt obliged to help them as members of the same race. To my surprise, they were grateful and promised to repay me. I taught them to hunt horned rabbits, and they soon began to bring me food, though I encouraged them to eat it themselves. This day ended on a beautiful note, and as I fell asleep, I experienced a strange sensation and received the blessing of the god of life and death. A mysterious voice explained this to me as I drifted off. Day 14 began with a surprising change. My hands had transformed, my skin was now black, and my body had grown significantly. Kichai underwent a similar change but retained his green skin. I used my stone knife as a mirror to examine my new appearance and was stunned by how good I looked. My abilities had also increased, and Kichai and I went to see Grandpa for guidance on our new lives. He explained that the evolution from goblin to hobgoblin is rare and that our physical resemblance to humans indicated a variation of that evolution. The black hue of my skin, associated with one of the gods, meant I could potentially use death skills, making me stronger than a normal hobgoblin but also a target for kidnapping. Grandpa's revelations brought both excitement and caution. Our evolution was a sign of growth, but it also marked us as unique and potentially valuable to others. The world was becoming more complex, and our journey was only beginning. Grandpa shared with us an astonishing revelation. Only Kichai and I had evolved within just a month of our birth, making us the strongest in our community. Consequently, we were granted special privileges, including access to the treasure room and the use of human women. Moreover, I was instructed to conceal any signs of my protection by the god of life and death. After digesting this information, I turned my attention to crafting new pants for Kichai. However, he was brimming with curiosity about the extent of our new strength and challenged me to a duel. We spent the entire day fighting, exploring the capabilities of our evolved bodies. It was a grueling match, as Kich's resilience and ability to absorb damage proved formidable. The victory was hard-won on my part. The remainder of the day was spent tailoring our clothing to fit our larger bodies, and we didn't need to concern ourselves with food, as the other goblins who had learned to hunt supplied us adequately. Day 15 marked our first day as hobgoblins, and our hunting expedition led us to new fox-headed monsters that I named cobbles. We spent some time studying them and devising an attack strategy. Gabumi, still in her weaker form, managed to distract them, allowing Kichai and me to engage them in battle. Despite my readiness to use my poison horn, Kichai insisted on testing his newfound strength in a real situation, fighting the cobbles alone. I watched with both confidence and awe as he emerged victorious, a transformation from weakness to champion within a day. After the battle, Gabumi tended to Kichai's injuries while I collected weapons and 2 marvelous swords from the cobbles. We feasted on the slain cobbles, and I learned useful skills. Gabumi then presented me with fire spirit stones, enabling me to learn pyrokinesis. This newfound ability to control fire was a thrilling development and would undoubtedly be invaluable in our survival. Our hunting continued, and I was pleased to see our apprentices successfully hunting an armored raccoon on their own. I rewarded their effort by cooking the meat, keeping the animal's armor for potential future use. Day 16 brought new challenges. My hunting apprentices approached me, seeking guidance on hunting night vipers, an encounter they had wisely avoided due to their lack of knowledge. We struck a deal. I would train them in exchange for a share of their loot. With Kichai and Gabumi's assistance, I embarked on rigorous training sessions, pushing the apprentices to their limits and instilling in them the law of survival, that only the strongest endure. It was a demanding but necessary process to ensure they recognized my authority and the rules of our world. At the conclusion of the intense training, everyone was drained except for me. Feeling energized, I resolved to hunt for food for everyone and offered to craft equipment from any useful animal parts they managed to hunt. I hoped this would inspire them to hunt even more passionately. As night fell, I embarked on my first solitary hunting expedition and ventured into the treasure room. There, I attempted to communicate with the imprisoned women, but it was to no avail. They were so feeble and devastated that they couldn't even speak. Their eyes were filled with the delirium of impending death, and one of them was even pregnant. The situation weighed heavily on me, and their plight was heartbreaking. I kindly offered them some of my poison to end their suffering and left, determined not to look back. Day 17 began with me delivering grim news to the Goblin grandfather. I found him asleep and woke him to report the deaths of all the women in the cellar, suggesting they had taken poison to die peacefully. Although I concealed my involvement, grandfather was overcome with grief for the loss of the women and the baby goblins they carried. I subsequently burned the bodies but took some parts to eat, acquiring new abilities, including human language. The experience was macabre but served my growth well. Later, I joined Kiche and Gebumi, only to discover that Gebumi had transformed into a hobgoblin. Her newfound appearance was stunning, and it was apparent that new clothing would be required. It seemed a perfect opportunity to employ my artisan skills to craft higher quality garments. Day 18 brought more hunting and training. We were fortunate to encounter 3 cobbles, one armed with a bow that would serve us well. Our collective strength, even Gebumi's rapid progress, pleased me greatly. Though Kichai lacked intelligence, his raw strength was awe-inspiring. After defeating the cobbles and confiscating their weapons and other valuable items, I gifted the bow to Gebumi, confident she would utilize it effectively. Though I did not absorb many new skills, I managed to enhance those I had previously learned. Day 19 inspired me to explore the storage cave, hoping to find valuables belonging to the kidnapped women. Utilizing my detection and analysis skills, I unearthed useful equipment, medicine, magic potions, and even magic books. A sword and a dagger in good condition caught my eye, and on impulse I consumed them to learn their associated skills. Kiche and Gebumi observed the peculiar act, but the new abilities I acquired justified my decision. After sorting through the inventory, we embarked on another hunting trip. Upon our return to the cave, we were greeted by goblins bearing copious food as an offering to me. However, I had to decline, knowing it would be impossible for me to consume it all. Day 20 marked our 5th consecutive day of training with the other goblins. The transformation in them was striking. They had taken on the appearance of goblin soldiers, a vast improvement that would surely save their lives in the wild. After training, we equipped ourselves with items from the storage cave and went hunting. Each time seemed better than the last, and on this day we managed to catch numerous night vipers, raccoon dogs, and 5 cobbles. A noteworthy discovery from the previous day was a crossbow, which I gave to Gebumi along with poison-laced arrows. Kichai, in contrast, received heavy-type armor and a great axe, suiting his love for close combat. As for myself, I provided leadership and strategic guidance, making even the cobbles no challenge for us. Strangely, we hadn't come across any pig-headed orcs, a disappointment both for the taste and the opportunity to improve my skills. Returning to our cave, I spent time with magical books, longing to understand their high-level content. Despite my eagerness, the books were beyond my grasp as they didn't cover fundamentals or basics. My inability to use magic tormented me, and I spent the day in frustrated reading. Day 21 brought us closer to a week of intense training. The goblins' progress amazed me, and they even managed to catch their first night viper. The satisfaction was immense. These once struggling creatures could now hunt their food. As their instructor, I felt pride in their development, though I did notice some peculiar glances from the elder goblins. Perhaps our success was unsettling to them. Training continued with Kiche and Gebumi, allowing me to gauge their distinct abilities. Kiche's strength and resilience contrasted sharply with Gebumi's speed, precision, and efficiency. The unique skills and techniques I taught them had shaped them into formidable hunters. As hunting time approached, we decided to include a little goblin named Gebu. Despite being the weakest, her potential was evident, and she would help carry the loot. Equipping her with Kichai's old shield, Gebumi's old bow, and a small obsidian knife, we embarked on the hunt. Gebu's talent for hunting impressed me, and I speculated that she might evolve into a hobgoblin soon. Content with our successful hunt, we returned home. Day 22 brought an unexpected lesson in humility. I overheard some goblins boasting about their strength and readiness to face anyone. Recognizing the danger of such arrogance, I intervened to teach them a lesson in discipline and caution. My stern approach might earn their resentment, but my intent was clear, to make everyone stronger and keep them grounded in reality. In the evening, Our hunting expedition took an intriguing turn when we stumbled upon 6 cobbles gathered together. As we were devising an attack plan, a 7th cobble appeared, distinguishable by a peculiar mask and staff that gave it the appearance of a magician. This cobble intrigued me, as it seemed likely to be a magician, and I cautioned the group to approach with care, mindful of the potential strength and danger. Instead of attacking immediately, I decided to observe the magician to glean insights into magic. Our careful stalking led us to witness the cobbles encountering a creature called a green slime, known for its immunity to physical attacks. Watching the magician in action against the slime, I started to grasp some understanding of magic. Seizing the opportunity, I attacked the magician from behind, landing a fatal stab to its heart. We then made quick work of the other 6 cobbles. As a personal reward, I collected all 7 cobble hearts to enhance my abilities, along with the nucleus of the green slime. I discovered a new way to defeat these creatures through fire and found myself learning new skills, including magic. This spurred me to begin practicing magic immediately. Our hunt continued as we wanted to help Gabumi gain more experience. Snakes and dogs fell to our efforts until we were satiated. My magic practice was challenging initially, but I managed to cast a few spells with time. A fortuitous encounter with a green slime allowed me to test my new spell, Spear of the End, although I may have overdone it slightly. From the encounter, I acquired a skill called bodily fluid manipulation, a curious ability that might prove useful. Day 23 brought unexpected changes within our cave community. Heavy rain kept us indoors, and all the goblins of my generation gathered to converse. To my surprise, they named me chief, sparking fights among themselves over positions in the new hierarchy. I let them wear themselves out before explaining the structure. Kichai, Gabumi, and Gabumi would follow me in rank, and high-ranking members would bear responsibilities and command those of lower rank. We outlined the chain of command and other functions, though my desire to implement a class system had to be postponed due to our limited numbers. Day 24 introduced us to a new and daunting prey, a spider demon. The creature's webbing was so terrifying that I used pyrokinesis to remove it, only to discover that it was highly flammable. The situation escalated quickly into a fire, and we had to rush to extinguish the flames, keen to avoid causing a forest fire. Once under control, we found the spider had been fried by the flames and ate it, comparing the taste to fish. Ingesting the spider allowed me to learn the skill to shoot webs from my fingertips, although I was initially unsure how to weave them. Fortunately, there were more spiders nearby, and after consuming them, I acquired the ability to weave spider thread, a skill promising to be very useful for crafting items like bows. We also harvested the spider's hard shells for armor crafting. As we continued on our way, we finally found what we were looking for, orcs. These orcs looked stronger and better equipped than we had seen before, including one who seemed to be their boss. Wisely deciding not to engage them in battle, we followed them to a mountainous mining area. Using echolocation to explore the caves, I discovered that the mining complex was populated with many orcs, making an attack suicidal. We retreated but encountered 3 orc mine workers, whom we managed to ambush and feast upon, taking their pikes and burning the remains. I also learned a skill called stench from eating orc meat, though its application remained unclear at the time. Day 25 brought challenges in the form of training. Some goblins struggled to keep pace, but fortunately, none died during hunting. Our hunting expedition led us to creatures we hadn't encountered before, with fur that seemed to be made of steel. I dubbed them black wolves. Observing a pack of 14, we spotted one that was notably larger. Our surprise attack began with a poison-tipped arrow from Gabumi crossbow, targeting their leader, followed by an intense fight against the rest of the wolves. I also took the opportunity to practice some magic. After defeating the entire pack, we began to harvest what was useful, leaving Kichai on guard, though it was not really necessary since I have the ability to sense presence. The girls worked on extracting the wolves' skins and cutting the meat. We divided the meat among ourselves, and I consumed the leader, learning abilities called Pack Leader and Steel Skin, both of which seemed promising. Pack Leader would allow me to assign the best person for specific tasks, and Steel Skin would enhance my defense when wearing armor made of their leather. Exhausted from the eventful day, we prepared to rest, reflecting on a day filled with both discovery and success. Day 26 began with an exciting surprise. Gabumi had transformed into a hobgoblin. The fight with the wolves likely caused her rapid development. To reward her, I gave her an accessory, and then we all started training. Unlike other days, I didn't want everyone to scatter to hunt. Today was special. I planned to upgrade everyone's armor. Low-rank goblins would receive horn sticks and shell shields, while hunting groups comprised of 4 to 5 goblins and a captain would wear light leather armor and metal weapons. It was going to be an important day. My goal was to stage a surprise attack on the orcs' mines, not out of malice but in the name of survival. We must kill or be killed. The battle went our way. Although many of us were wounded, none of our goblins died. I sustained injuries to my arm, but my regeneration ability would heal them. We celebrated with a feast, roasting and eating the meat of our enemies. As I looked at the goblins, once mere members of the pack, now my pupils, I realized my responsibility to help them all. After feasting, we gathered items, including spirit stones, which I collected. The day was productive, but left me thirsty. I realized I hadn't drunk anything enjoyable since my reincarnation. I longed for a good beer and wondered what had become of the beers I had bought before my murder. Day 27 started more relaxed, with me pondering the use of the spirit stones. Suddenly, a group of unknown armored goblins arrived, 3 hobgoblins among them. I was ready to fight until Grandfather informed me they were our kin, returning from an expedition. My tension eased, but it spiked again with the arrival of a hobgoblin named Ken and his group of 5 kidnapped human women. One of the women wore light armor, possibly an adventurer, and though her face was a bit damaged, her clothes were in good condition, suggesting no abuse had occurred yet. I expressed my concern to Ken, explaining my duty as a hobgoblin to create descendants, and my intention to release the women. Increasing our numbers would cause problems in our community, and humans might see us as a threat. I wanted to focus on training those already among us and learning about humans. Ken didn't like my ideas, and the atmosphere turned tense. His goblins began to arm themselves, showing they didn't care about my opinions. I decided that if they wanted to fight, they would have it. Ken's threats came quickly and forcefully, and he even demanded that I repent or face death. I drew my sword, ready to fight, but 2 more hobgoblins arrived on the scene and stopped us before we could start. I didn't know who they were until I met Sam Stato, a wizard hobgoblin. He urged us to fight wisely if we were to engage in combat. He suggested a battle for community leadership. By that time, it was noon, but before starting, I questioned why Seto didn't challenge Ken himself. He explained that he had no interest in leading, which made me glance at Ken's goblins, who were playing games of chance. Surprised by their knowledge of these games, I listened as they explained the fight rules: no weapons, win by surrender or defeat, and Grandfather would referee. Without further ado, Ken and I stood ready for battle, even though all the other goblins supported Ken. When Grandfather signaled the start, Ken lunged at me, but I stopped him with my cobweb threads, entangling him and hoisting him up a tree. Offering him the chance to surrender, Ken's pride prevented him, and he became my punching bag. I hit him hard, overwhelming everyone watching. Grandfather thought I had a weapon, but I explained the threads came from my body. I chose not to kill Ken. He might be useful later. Turning to the others, I saw their frightened faces. Having won first place in the community, I ordered them not to touch the human women and informed them of my plan to change the community rules. I took the women to the storage cave, explaining that escaping might be more dangerous for them. When I spoke to them, one woman was particularly surprised that I could communicate with humans. I tried to gain their trust, and one finally explained their situation. The other 4 were street vendors, and she was part of a guild of adventurers hired to protect them. They were attacked on their way to Ironton, resulting in a massacre, as more than half the bodyguards were inexperienced. The goblins who attacked also looted their belongings, and the women were captured. This story sounded terrifying, and they all started crying. I couldn't imagine their pain, so I left them a torch and blankets and retreated to let them calm down a bit. Day 28 began with me bringing breakfast to the women, who appeared more radiant than the day before. The same girl who spoke to me yesterday greeted me with a smile, while the other 4 seemed afraid. Understanding their fear, as I was a member of the goblins who attacked them, I resolved to give them time to realize that I meant them no harm. I served them food made from the ingredients that the goblins had looted, and they all ate, feeling a bit better. I joined them, enjoying the delicious soup I had prepared for them, even getting goosebumps from the joy it brought me. As we ate, we became more comfortable, and they began to share details about their lives and jobs. Seeing an opportunity for them to keep busy and not dwell on their kidnapping, I assigned them tasks. The first girl, who knew blacksmithing, would maintain our weapons. 2 others, who seemed to be sisters and knew cooking and tailoring, would cook for us. The prettiest and most intelligent girl, who knew alchemy, would make potions. I warned the cooks about attempting to poison the food. Lastly, the red-haired girl, a rookie warrior, would have the chance to continue her training with us. I also discussed the new job system I devised to compensate for the differences in power between humans and monsters. The system included benefits, rewards, and the ability to level up skills, something even used by those now called heroes. And although we planned to train after breakfast, a change in plans led us to prepare to move to a more spacious place since our small cave was now too crowded. We decided on the mines we had seized from the orcs, a location both larger and well reinforced. I also needed the spiritual stones found there. I sent Kichai ahead with 10 other goblins to exterminate any remaining orcs. An hour later, we all left, including the humans. Saying goodbye to my birthplace, we arrived at the mines where Kichi's army had dealt with the remaining orcs. I thanked him, instructed him to distribute the meat to his army, and kept the hearts of the bodies. Entering the mine, we began adapting the place to our needs, creating rooms for weapons, accommodations, and bathrooms. I also set up separate living quarters for the human girls, along with areas for a smithy, kitchen, and general work. My ability to control the earth, combined with the discovery of water and firestones, helped us illuminate our new home. We spent the rest of the day cleaning and arranging everything. By that time, the girls had grown more comfortable, and we continued talking as the food was almost ready. Day 29 commenced with the training of the older goblins, while I had the younger ones observe. Despite some disagreement with Kin, I pressed forward, knowing the other goblins in his army would likely follow suit. Things grew lively, and I took on the role of an army surgeon, encouraging the others in their training. One adult goblin grew annoyed and tried to attack me, but I quickly quelled his aggression with a firm blow to his snout, asserting my authority. The following hours were marked by monotony as we drilled repeatedly, the goblin's strength allowing them to recover quickly. I made them repeat the training over and over again. For going hunting that day to focus on training, I later laid down new rules, undeterred by any lingering discontentment. I was in charge now. Day 30 brought rain, preventing us from hunting, but I seized the opportunity to conduct a special training session. We organized a wrestling event, separating the goblins and hobgoblins due to their significant strength differences. As expected, the hobgoblins exhibited evenly matched strength among themselves. After the event, everyone dispersed to various tasks. Some continued training, others practiced mining, and those who could read began teaching the others. Meanwhile, I approached Sato to satisfy my curiosity about magic. He explained that several magic systems existed, but I only knew about those of fire, liquid, and abyss. Having barely read a magic book, I found myself confused about these systems. After talking more with Sei, I visited the human women to help them with their work. I also had an ulterior motive. I couldn't help but admire their beauty, and I enjoyed being in their presence. Day 31 was marked by continued rain, forcing us to train indoors. Kichai and I engaged in a friendly fight, donning new clothing made of black wolf skins and weapons taken from the orcs. With each duel, I noticed how increasingly difficult it was to defeat Kichai. His strength and his fire spirit stone-infused axe were problematic, despite my fire tolerance ability. We fought intensely all afternoon, unaware that some goblins planned to visit the human girl's room at night with malicious intent. That night, after training, I sensed the presence of 8 individuals moving toward the girl's room. Armed with a weapon, I followed them, wanting to confirm their intentions. Once I realized what they planned, I had no choice but to teach those wrongdoers a lesson. The commotion awoke the girls and revealed that the culprits were Ken and his followers. After trying and failing to reason with Ken, I once again demonstrated who was in charge. Gathering all the goblins at the mine's entrance, I emphasized the rules and the consequences of disobedience. One by one, I tortured Ken's lackeys to death in the slowest, most painful way, reserving the harshest treatment for Ken himself. I tortured him throughout the night until the sun rose on day 32, and he finally succumbed. I then ordered everyone to stop training, allowing those who wanted to rest. The terror of the night had paralyzed most, and after cleaning up, I went to sleep until the afternoon. When I awoke, my group went hunting, assigning 5 bodyguards to the girls for their protection. Deep in the forest, we encountered 2 triple-horned horses, creatures more potent than hobgoblins. Our initial attacks failed, as Gabumi's arrows couldn't pierce their strong armor. Even our lethal poison was ineffective. Eventually, I managed to snare one with my spider silk, allowing the others to fill it with arrows, while Kichai and I discovered a weak point in the other's scales and killed it. These hard-fought victories strengthened our hunting group's bond. After collecting the horns, hearts, scales, and consuming the meat, I discovered new abilities, including a powerful triple blow that greatly satisfied me. We returned home to rest, and an unusual occurrence marked the night. The red-haired girl came to my bed. Although nothing happened, I must confess that sleeping beside her felt pretty good. Day 33 began with a surprising find. I woke up to discover that Gabumi had joined me in bed without my noticing. Though her ability to sneak past my senses perplexed me, I brushed it aside, pleased with the situation. During breakfast, I momentarily lost control of my arm, likely due to numbness from sleeping with the girls. Feeling relieved that it wasn't a serious problem, I proceeded to start the day with intense training. Kiche informed me that everyone seemed ready and eager to grow stronger, looking to me as their example. Due to the recent increase in goblins in our community, I felt compelled to reorganize and classify them into teams. I decided that Kichai would lead the strongest fighters, known as the Anger Team. Sada would be in command of the Hatred Team, specializing in fast and precise attacks. Gabumi would helm the Regrets Team, focusing on ranged warfare. Gabby would manage the Pleasure Team, supporting the others in minor tasks. Lastly, Sei, the Hobgoblin Magician, would guide the Agony Team, which specializes in magic. After planning and training filled the day, I went out alone to hunt, leaving the others to their studies and training. On my journey, I encountered a demon spider and harvested its shells for armor, eating the rest. I also found some three-horned horses and seized the opportunity to practice magic against them. Sei had taught me about the magic casting process, which involved controlling mana, casting the spell, and usually using a staff. However, I found that I could control the mana without needing a staff. I cast the Spear of the End spell, tearing off a horse's head, surprising even myself with its formidable strength. Though considered the weakest spell in the death variant, its power was remarkable, leading me to reserve it for extreme situations. After removing the horns and eating the meat, I acquired a skill that enabled me to produce scale-like armor on my body. The sudden transformation of my arm into a scaly appearance was quite alarming at first. I soon recognized it as the defensive property of the new skill, but the experience was frustrating initially. After calming down a bit from my previous encounter, I continued with the hunt and soon ran into a green slime. I incinerated it with my fire magic and consumed its core, learning an ability called Metamorphosis. This new skill allowed my body to become elastic, gave me control over body fluids, and even let me continue fighting without arms and legs, something I found rather disgusting but intriguing. As it was getting late, I decided to head home, only to stumble upon a trail of blood on the road. The sight led me to the beast my grandfather had mentioned, a red bear. It was a massive creature, with muscles that dwarfed mine and hair that looked like steel. Though everything in me screamed to run away, I found myself standing in front of the bear, my mind envisioning how I would defeat it. Driven by a survival instinct, I decided to face the beast, believing that defeating it would grant me power and new abilities. In this extreme situation, I threw another spear of the end at the bear, but to no avail. Back in the cave, Gabumi began to worry as the sun set, and I had not yet returned. Her inquiries among the others yielded no information, and all were engrossed in their tasks. Meanwhile, the bear had proven to be incredibly tough. My spear did no damage and only enraged it. In the ensuing hand-to-hand battle, I attempted to strike its head with my axe, but even that did little. The bear regenerated wounds, had incredible reflexes, and proved incredibly strong. I tried to subdue it with my poison-coated ropes, but it broke free and even breathed fire like a dragon. At that moment, I resigned myself to not leaving this confrontation unscathed. Everything I threw at the animal was futile, so I decided to risk it all in a single move. I waited for it to open its mouth and attacked with my poison-coated sword, also activating my triple hit ability. I landed a blow through its head, but it clawed me, hurling me against a rock and leaving me bleeding and in severe pain. The bear had lost the ability to breathe flames, thanks to the fragment of my sword stuck in its throat, but it was far from defeated. In a desperate act, I jumped on it and managed to strike its head with my axe, but even then, the beast remained standing. Both of us were severely wounded, but the bear seemed nearly immortal, still standing despite 2 devastating blows. I was in bad shape, with my weapons broken and my arm injured. In a final, all-or-nothing effort, I let my impulses guide me and threw myself at the beast again, knowing that this confrontation would determine everything. Day 34. Drained from the intense battle, I guess I fell into an unconscious sleep. Upon waking up, the sight was horrific. I was a mess with injuries and blood everywhere and missing an arm, but the severed head of the bear was a beacon of victory. With the little strength left, I started to eat the bear's hand and learn new skills almost immediately. A peculiar urge to rank up popped into my mind, but all I wanted was to eat more and acquire more skills. As I regained some strength, I skinned the bear, noticing everything seemed smaller than the night before, but I brushed off the thoughts, realizing that my lost arm needed immediate attention. During this time, I continued learning new skills, but was overwhelmed by fatigue and body aches. After consuming the entire bear and regaining my strength, I noticed my body had changed. Despite being covered in blood, strange tattoos adorned my chest, my arm was thicker, and my hair had turned deep gray and grown longer. Surprisingly, I had 2 horns on my forehead and soon realized that I was no longer a hobgoblin. I recalled a notification asking if I wanted to evolve, and it appeared I had subconsciously agreed. Now I was an ogre, an unexpected development, but not entirely unwelcome. Figuring the best course of action would be to return home, I noticed my nudity and had no choice but to wear the bear's hide. Reflecting on the fight, I realized how crucial my skills were to my victory. Even the strange skill, stench, had been instrumental. Upon reaching home, everyone was taken aback and planned an attack, not recognizing me. However, Gaby recognized me and ran to me, teary-eyed. Her happiness was soon replaced by a motherly scolding for losing my arm. After calming down, I apologized for leaving without notice and explained my situation to everyone, especially my grandfather. Initially, my grandfather was skeptical about my fight with a red bear. He explained that red bears, particularly the variant called the Lord of the Mountains, were formidable foes capable of using magic and breathing fire. However, he was impressed that I, a newborn, could defeat such a beast. We talked for an hour before I decided to head to the workshop to make new clothes and inform the girls about my transformation. Despite initial disbelief, they finally accepted my new self. I requested the smith girl to repair my pack and learned about her recent development of spiritual stone weapons, which intrigued me. I also visited the cooking sisters, asking them to prepare a bear stew since I planned to hunt more red bears. They required certain herbs for the stew, so I decided to assign some subordinates to help them find the herbs. On an impulsive whim, I proposed to the cooking sisters, leaving them with something to ponder. Next, I visited the alchemist who was busy concocting potions. I noticed something peculiar about one of her potions and asked her about it. It turned out to be a lethal poison, which she intended to keep for personal defense in extreme emergencies. During our interaction, she flirted with me a bit, which I indulged, and in return, she offered me a warm, genuine smile. Oddly enough, all the girls seemed to be showing an increased interest in me, which led to spending more time with them. While contemplating crafting some clothes for myself, I realized that bear skin was challenging to work with. In the interim, I decided to utilize raccoon skins until I could fashion clothing from the bear hide. Finally, I decided to get some rest. On day 35, I was considering crafting hunting tools when 3 of my subordinates surprised me with their evolution into hobgoblins. In recognition of their progress, I rewarded them with morning gifts, and we started intense training. But I quickly realized that my enhanced body was too strong for them. A single blow from me was too much, even for Kichai, accidentally breaking his axe and his pride in the process. In his anger, he stormed off to hunt alone. The goblin girls, Mayan and Sato, also embarked on a solo hunting mission, and the rest began to train rigorously. Even the human warrior girl joined the goblins for combat training. While observing everyone, I worked on weaving the bearskin. Considering my one-armed condition, I managed pretty well. Sei, who was beside me, noticed Kitchi's behavior and questioned his future actions. I wasn't sure what to say. It would all depend on his next move. I requested Sei return my book, but she pretended not to hear me. Despite these minor hiccups, the day was quieter than I anticipated. On day 37, the remaining goblins in our community evolved into hobgoblins. As I pondered this evolution, I gifted them as a recognition of their development, following which we engaged in training and lunch. However, Hobu came rushing in, carrying a small, blood-soaked person in her arms. I swiftly named her Carbuncle, giving her a carbuncle as well. Don't ask me about the source of the name. Faced with Carbuncle's great injuries, my appetite disappeared, and I turned my attention to Gabu. Observing Carbuncle's severe blood loss, I decided to fetch the alchemist to prepare a medicine. Moments later, Carbuncle woke up, understandably disoriented. Once we explained the situation, she gratefully thanked us for our help, despite being strangers. Carbuncle introduced herself as Returner, a victim of a human attack due to the pricey gem embedded in her forehead. While listening to her distressing story, she requested us to deal with these humans. She also mentioned overseeing a secret dungeon in the mines. Suddenly, she started experiencing pain, pleading for our help. To provide some backstory, Returner was an artificially created carbuncle by a magician named Velvet. Upon his death, he entrusted her with safeguarding his treasures. The dungeon held powerful, valuable items that Velvet had made and concealed to keep away from selfish humans. Despite the healing of her superficial wounds, Carbuncle's core had suffered severe damage during the human attack. As a result, her life expectancy was limited. She also mentioned that her skeletal army, guarding the entrance, had been eradicated by the humans. In return for exterminating the humans, she offered us to take anything from the dungeon, stating Velvet's disdain for humans. At this point, my primary concern was rallying others, discussing the matter with the human girls, and prepping for combat. I especially wanted to converse with the blacksmith regarding the spirit stone knife she had previously crafted, anticipating its usefulness. However, my intent was not to eliminate all humans, but to attempt peaceful negotiations. If things escalated, we would resort to force. After bidding the girls goodbye, we entered the mines via a hole Gobu had made. We reached what seemed to be Velvet's secret dungeon, guarded by Returner. I ventured in, flanked by my minions in hiding, and encountered the human intruders. Their main objective was to extract the gem from Returner's forehead. They unanimously decided to eliminate me, but I implored them to listen and reason. I explained how they were trespassing, had slain the guardians, and were now intent on theft, which made them criminals. In my benevolence, I suggested they surrender and leave, promising no retaliation. Meanwhile, I assessed them, leveraging my presence sensing ability. On closer examination, I discovered that several of them carried high-level magic items. Despite their effective team formation, something felt amiss, a sense that soon materialized as a surprise attack from a magician. This blatant aggression exhausted my patience, and it also left me in pain. My elite group sprung into action, swiftly subduing the defiant humans. This encounter resulted in the elimination of the intruders who had harmed Returner. I had the opportunity to test the new knife crafted by the blacksmith girl. It possessed an impressive edge, and with a slight shake, it acted as a revolver, launching potent water bullets capable of piercing armor. Gabumi requested to try the knife, but it required a certain technique to activate. After some playful experimentation, we confiscated the intruders' equipment and valuables, consuming them. The array of skills I learned suggested that they were high-level entities. We discovered remarkable magical items among their possessions, including a storage backpack that worked like an expansive inventory and a hermit ring that concealed the wearer's status information. Not fully understanding their function, I consumed them both. Following this, Returner led us to the dungeon entrance. It was sealed, so we used Gabu's mining method to create an entry. Inside, we found a treasure trove of potent magical objects and a mummified body wearing a silver bracelet, seated on a throne. The body belonged to Velvet. Returner thanked us for our efforts and, as promised, invited us to take what we wanted. During a moment of silence, she revealed the reason for the abundant spiritual stones at our home was Velvet's doing, which was unusual. When it was time to part ways, a contented Returner bid us farewell, disappearing while leaving her forehead jewel in my hand. I swallowed the jewel, gaining an ability called the Golden Rule. After paying our respects to Returner, we prepared to transport all the treasure, utilizing the swallowed backpack. I decided to cremate Velvet's body, ensuring a peaceful eternal rest, and took the throne. His silver arm remained intact even after incineration, so I decided to keep it. The arm, named Goblin, was indestructible, could change shape, and had the ability to absorb elements and transform into a powerful weapon or shield. At first, attaching the arm was problematic due to size differences, but as I brought it closer, it began adhering to me, causing intense pain before adjusting to the right size. I tested its functionality, and it responded so naturally that it felt as if I had always possessed it. Its flexibility was remarkable. With my newly enhanced arm, I suggested to the others that we prepare a feast to celebrate our loot. I should mention that the intruders carried alcoholic beverages, providing us with the means to elevate the celebration. I needed the uplifting atmosphere, still mourning Returner's death. I took a moment to explain to the human girls that my intent was never to kill the intruders, but their foolishness left me no choice. Understanding my perspective, they joined the festivities. Day 38 started as usual. After our routine training, I visited the blacksmith, and we delved into the items we had unearthed the previous day. Unfortunately, Our knowledge was insufficient to decipher the purpose of these magical objects, a quandary the merchant girl also faced. Consequently, we spent the entire day researching the mysterious artifacts. On day 39, I decided to distribute some of the valuable items among the most significant hobgoblins in our community. Hoarding such potent items without using them felt wasteful. However, I only entrusted the items to the most influential individuals, as these objects were extraordinarily powerful, potentially causing issues if mishandled by a novice. I chose for myself a spear known as Kazakli and a bracelet titled the King's Fury. Along with my silver arm, or Goblin, I now possessed 3 legendary class magic items. To give some context, this world harbors ancient dungeons replete with highly valuable and powerful items. These items can surpass the power of standard items by 2 or 3 times. They are classified into 7 categories: inferior, normal, rare, unique, ancient, legendary, and ghostly. The artifacts we discovered in Velvet's dungeon belong to the ancient, legendary, and ghostly categories, implying Velvet's considerable strength. According to my limited understanding, even an ancient category item could devastate entire countries. The power of ghostly objects is unimaginable, though I recognize my knowledge gap. As the afternoon rolled in, I reassembled the hobgoblins to whom I had gifted the artifacts for a bear hunt, aimed at securing ingredients for a promised bear stew. Just as we prepared to leave, the human warrior decided to accompany us. Given her inexperience, I assumed responsibility for her supervision. I had no objections to her joining us. During the hunt, I let my team take the lead, ready to step in if needed. It was important for my team to level up to my combat skills. With their new items and strong team formation, they fared well, despite the bears' challenging opposition. This hunting experience significantly enhanced their skill sets. As an end note to a successful day, we finally savored the much-anticipated bear stew. Day 40 was somewhat special due to the early morning rain. Consequently, I arranged a fighting event to fill the void left by Ken, the former hobgoblin leader. Although I couldn't participate being an ogre, I enjoyed observing the others enhance their strength and skills. An idea of forming a mercenary squad of the strongest started to intrigue me. But for the time being, I took pleasure in watching the championship fights for the rest of the day. At sunrise on day 41, I embarked on a hunting expedition to gain strength and seek beasts to acquire new skills and experience. Yesterday, while spectating the fights, I discovered the need for blankets and sleeping clothes for others, an interesting consequence of my boredom. Back to my hunting trip, the first creature I encountered was a golden spider. Despite its enormous size, it moved swiftly, possessed extraordinary strength, and bore a hard shell. Killing the beast took longer than anticipated. After consuming its meat, I saved its shell for future use. Its delectable taste spurred me to look for more such spiders. Along the way, I developed a skill to create durable and aesthetically pleasing golden threads, improving my armor sewing abilities. Next, I stumbled upon a horned minion that resembled quartz. I decided to inflict minimal damage to preserve its skin and horns, resorting to poison. After storing the valuable items in my inventory, I sought more deer in hopes of learning new skills. Meanwhile, I discovered that this world is predominantly occupied by dryads, tree-dwelling creatures. They fiercely protect trees, their homes, even to the extent of cursing or killing humans, leading to their antagonism with woodcutters. This knowledge, obtained from the old man, guided me to avoid damaging trees for safety. But the old man warned me that dryads lure males who approach their trees thanks to their irresistible beauty. Once ensnared, the fate of the victims depends on the dryad's whims. If they find favor, the victim is subjected to eternal sleep and gradually disintegrated into tree fodder. Otherwise, they curse the victim's soul and murder them ruthlessly. Despite hearing of several goblins who fell victim to the dryads, I considered their susceptibility silly. However, as I was mulling over this, I felt an unusual excitement at the prospect of meeting a dryad, and sure enough, I encountered one. The old man was spot on. The creature's beauty was breathtaking, but her sudden emergence from a tree trunk left me somewhat unsettled. However, I swiftly regained my composure, remembering my grandfather's warning about these beautiful yet devilish creatures. Keeping my distance, I feigned disinterest while discussing my experiences and the beauty of plants. Despite my efforts, she approached, and I found myself backed against a rock, unable to retreat. She pressed her body close, and though my mind rebelled against the enchantment, my body longed for closeness. I was determined not to succumb and become tree fodder. My drastic solution involved drawing something from my pants, grappling the dryad, and throwing her to the ground. I attacked relentlessly, intending to exhaust her before she could ensnare me. For about 5 hours, I vented my lust on her body, unexpectedly acquiring a new ability named Dryad Love. Once she tired, she released me, inviting me to visit again. I left, reminiscing about the encounter. Following my thoughts, I found a river, which I traced upstream to a waterfall and a nice bathing spot. After my exertions with the Dryad, a bath seemed perfect. However, as I bathed, a group of lizard men surrounded me. It concerned me that I hadn't sensed their presence, possibly due to the limitations of my current detection ability with underwater species. I felt fortunate that they weren't stronger, more dangerous creatures. There were 8 in total, armed with small machetes. Their scales seemed like formidable armor while I was unarmed and practically submerged. However, my abilities put me at an advantage, and it took only a few blows to dispatch them all in under 30 seconds. Their taste was surprisingly good. I also gained the ability to speak their language, which would have been helpful during their initial approach. After the encounter, I continued my journey to a treeless plain, providing a refreshing change of scenery. In the distance, I spotted a creature resembling a bull but with a human-like head. I dubbed it a bicorn. As it charged me, I defended myself with a punch from my silver arm, inadvertently causing its head to explode from the impact. I appreciated the power of Velvet's creations. I made a quick fire and enjoyed the meat of the bicorn, although it offered no new skills. Nonetheless, it tasted delicious, and I planned to return with the others for more hunting. After such an eventful day, I ended it by returning to my hunting activities. Day 42 brought me wandering through our base when my subordinates summoned me, eager to showcase something intriguing. What I found was 2 hobgoblins engaging in magical training. Without hesitation, I asked Say to guide them in their studies and joined the session myself, keen to deepen my knowledge of magic. In Say's room, a library of magical books reflected her avid interest in the subject. I noticed they had stashed my book in their collection, but since I'd already mastered its contents, I ignored it. Say radiated an unsettling excitement, thrilled about acquiring her first students. The prospect of what she might do with the hobgoblins made me uncomfortable, yet I knew better than to intervene. I quietly retreated to a corner and occupied myself with another book, eavesdropping on Say's lesson. I discovered that Say hadn't mastered all types of magic yet and overlooked some basic concepts. Her initial focus on fire magic meant other magical disciplines weren't as accessible to her. Understanding this, the abundance of books and her dedication to studying them made sense. She likely aimed to broaden her magical prowess, something I related to given my own progression from my innate death magic. After 3 hours of reading, one book stood out, a book on enchantments. Unlike magic, enchantments imbue objects such as weapons or armor with magical properties, potentially proving more critical in battle. Motivated to harness this power, I devoured the book's information and decided to apply my new skill. I sought the blacksmith and tried to infuse spiritual stones and iron knives with my new enchanting ability. The result was astounding. The knives became more robust and sharper, and the stones significantly stronger. Despite the triumphant outcome, not all attempts were successful, and I sensed the blacksmith's growing irritation. Although she chose not to share, I made a mental note to address her concerns later. On day 43, I woke up and immediately sensed Gobumi's displeasure with me. I couldn't comprehend why, so I sought the company of the cooking girls. However, they too were quite upset, so much so that they even offered me poisoned food. The confusion overwhelmed me. Seeking answers, I approached the alchemist. She revealed that the girls had discovered my incident with the Dryad and jealousy had spurred their anger. Apparently, they had seen the verse marks and bites on my neck, a clear sign that the Dryad had claimed me. This revelation left me bewildered, pondering ways to pacify the girls. While I was lost in my thoughts, the alchemist, who looked drier than a raisin, came to me and kissed me. She claimed it was a gesture of gratitude, but it left me even more perplexed. Despite my confusion, we continued to share moments of mutual affection. Suddenly, an irate Gobumi stormed in, insisting I show her the same affection. This was soon followed by the arrival of the other human girls, pleading not to be left alone. I soon realized that I was emitting a bodily fluid that acted like a pheromone. At this point, too baffled to argue, I built a noise-proof dome with my golden silk and isolated myself from the girls. An incredibly wild night ensued, something I had never anticipated, but nonetheless thoroughly enjoyed. Day 44 dawned, and there I was, content and happily asleep among the girls, when my presence-sensing ability signaled a strange presence nearby. With its recent upgrade, I could now gather more information about the entities around me. Eagerly, Kitche informed me of the arrival of 3 demi-humans at the cave's entrance. Displaying newfound maturity, Kitche decided to consult with me instead of attacking. The newcomers greeted me with a contemptuous attitude, arousing an urge to rip them apart, but I managed to restrain myself. These pointy-eared elves were there to persuade us to join their armies. The humans had discovered the valuable treasures guarded by the elves, indicating a potential war. These elves had sought us out as they had learned of my triumph over the mountain's bear lord, a beast they had failed to conquer. I summoned my grandfather to witness the proceedings while the elf kept enticing us with promises of guaranteed food supplies and the choice of a unique object or 2 of their beautiful women. Their desperation was apparent due to their inferior military strength compared to humans. They feared enslavement and thus sought our help. However, I found their offer disrespectful given the strength of my army and our possession of the powerful velvet items. I flatly refused their proposal, which left the elf outraged. Anticipating an attack, I decided to take action. I wanted to teach this arrogant elf a lesson, so I utilized my evil eye and intimidating gaze skills. The terror I induced left the elf breathless. I grabbed him by his delicate neck, warning him to call off his hidden archers. Just as an arrow headed towards me, I caught it in my mouth, instilling more fear in the elf. He complied, ordering the hidden archers to emerge. I then declared my stance, firmly telling the elves that I had no intention of joining their ineffective army. Still, recognizing my shared existence with them in this forest, I agreed to aid in battling the humans, but only if they threatened to invade. However, I gave a clear warning that any harm to me or mine would see me feasting on the elves one by one, leaving him for the last. Consequently, the elves scampered away, as chickens do when startled. While I hope they harbored no intentions for vengeance, I stand ready to administer another firm lesson should it be needed. This should temper their arrogance. The elf I interacted with appeared to be their leader, hailing from a village beyond the flat territory I discovered earlier. I resolved to visit their village the next time I travel in that direction. However, the entire encounter proved quite exhausting and unsettling. I dearly hope to avoid such interactions for a long time to come. The thought of them returning with their arrogance to seek help tires me out. Day 45 began with my intent to continue exploration in hopes of filling gaps in my mental map. On my venture, I encountered a slime, but this one was gray, not green. Its size was almost double, with increased speed and strength, suggesting it was an advanced version of the green slime. Surprisingly, using igneous magic, which typically harmed green slimes, had the opposite effect on the gray variant, but employing pyrokinesis proved successful. Intrigued by this, I spent about an hour hunting and killing around 20 gray slimes, collecting their nuclei for further study. Upon examining the nuclei, I found that these creatures resist all forms of magic, except end magic. Interestingly, fire and electricity, when not magic generated, could eliminate them easily. Although curious, I decided not to dwell on it, having figured out a way to defeat them. Savoring a feast of gray slime nuclei, I unlocked some high-level skills, one of which, self-replicate, piqued my interest. I decided to test it by inflicting a wound on myself and letting my blood drop. Remarkably, my blood formed a miniature version of me, with whom I shared thoughts and visions. This skill seemed immensely valuable for combat situations. I eagerly wondered if leveling up this skill would be possible as it seemed highly utilizable. On day 46, I found myself contemplating a visit to Goblin. The purpose of this visit was a somewhat unconventional one. I was interested in observing the texture of her body, an examination she was eager to permit under the mistaken impression that I intended to use her form as a basis for designing new armor. However, that was far from my objective. Rather than fashioning armor, I envisioned crafting casual, comfortable clothing for our band of girls, a departure from the heavy gear they were accustomed to. This was not a task of any significant strategic importance, but rather an enjoyable diversion. More importantly, it was a gesture I felt would contribute to the overall morale of our group. Moreover, I took an extra step to enhance the clothing, infusing each piece with my own blood clones. This was an added safeguard, a precautionary measure to ensure the girls' safety should any unforeseen circumstances arise. Their reaction to the new attire was overwhelmingly positive, delight written on their faces. However, I did caution them against wearing these less robust clothes during their hunting trips, fearing the delicate material would not fare well under such strenuous conditions. As the day drew to a close, the promise of intriguing developments lingered in the night air. The morning of day 47 brought with it an uncanny sensation. My intuition ability, usually a dormant sense, had inexplicably been activated and remained so throughout the day. Not only that, the voices began to resonate within my head. These phantom whispers urged me to remain within the relative safety of the cave. Intrigued yet cautious, I decided to heed the advice of these internal voices, declaring the day a break from my usual routines, a day of relaxation and self-care. Nonetheless, my curiosity got the better of me. As much as I wished to stay within the confines of the cave, the urge to continue exploring our surroundings was too strong to ignore. Striking a balance between caution and curiosity, I decided to send one of my mini-me clones on an expedition to investigate the yet unexplored parts of our territory, a hobby that I had come to enjoy in recent times. This clone, smaller and less powerful than me, became an extension of my own curiosity. I sent him off into the unknown while I stayed back, relishing in some much-needed downtime and engaging in light-hearted conversation with the girls. Later, as I sauntered into the living room, I found Kichai and the redhead deeply engrossed in their training regimen. This moment of peace was disrupted by the sudden activation of my presence detection ability. It alerted me to the approaching danger. The arrogant elf and his troop were back, their swift return catching me by surprise. Sensing an impending conflict, I began preparations for a surprise attack on the outskirts of the mines. However, I resolved not to involve the Gabu team in this endeavor, urging them to continue their work within the mines. As the pieces of my ambush fell into place, I endeavored to maintain an air of normalcy. I encouraged the others in the mine to continue their day-to-day activities, hoping to dispel any suspicions that the approaching elves might harbor. The elf party, numbering approximately 25 and brimming with a thirst for revenge, soon arrived at our location. Instead of engaging in immediate combat, I saw an opportunity for a more strategic approach. I decided to capture them, intending to glean useful information from them through interrogation. As the elves neared the mine entrance, I let out a powerful roar. The sound was more than just an expression of ferocity. It was imbued with such immense energy that it triggered a paralyzing terror in the hearts of the elves, making their capture a straightforward affair. The interrogation that followed was revealing. The elf leader, ever prideful and arrogant, maintained that I had tarnished his dignity as a leader and thus merited death. In stark contrast, the other elves offered apologies, reassuring me that they had attempted to reason with their stubborn leader, all in vain. Moved by their plight, I felt an execution would not serve justice. Instead, I formulated a new strategy. I suggested a combat simulation, one with real, potentially fatal consequences. I offered them a challenge. If they could best my men in combat, they would earn their freedom. However, if they failed, their lives would be forfeit. I also warned them against any underhanded tactics, promising swift and sure death if they attempted to betray us during this trial. Having set the conditions, I released all the elves, barring their leader. As the elves took in their newfound freedom, they were reminded once again of the rules. But as it so often happens, one of the elves resisted, foolishly launching an attack against me. This provided a perfect opportunity to demonstrate the gravity of the consequences of breaking my rules. With a swift motion, I ended the rebel elf's life, making a stern example for the rest. The fear in the elves' eyes was evident, and I made it clear to them that if they harbored any hopes of facing humans with such a timid demeanor, they were sorely mistaken. It was Mary, though, who really stirred them into action. With palpable fervor, she shouted that their only path to survival was to fight with all they had. This impassioned plea resonated with the elves, and they squared up for the challenge that awaited. At the end of the fierce skirmish, 6 out of the 23 elves faced defeat. Notably, some had the misfortune of coming up against Kichai, which did not bode well for them. Those who lost pleaded for mercy, but considering their initial intent to kill us, mercy was hard to grant. In the end, we executed the defeated elves. The victors, though, I chose to spare, yet freedom was not on the cards for them. I made them my prisoners of war, demanding that they hand over all their equipment. One elf, however, voiced his discontent, reminding me of my promise of freedom for the winners. I clarified that I had never explicitly promised freedom, only that I would spare their lives. Out of the victors, 10 were men and 7 were women. We saw an opportunity in them to satisfy certain desires, but I knew that letting things get out of hand would lead to chaos. So I housed the elves in separate cells, ensuring that any hobgoblin wanting to engage with them had to seek permission first, maintaining a semblance of order. Reflecting on it all, the surprise elf attack wasn't entirely negative. With our community's growing needs, the elves unintentionally provided us with valuable resources. As for the arrogant elf leader, I decided he would be instrumental in my classes on torture and understanding the vulnerabilities of elves. The classes, however, were so brutally realistic that he couldn't withstand the pain and perished. Though I eventually consumed him, I did say a prayer in his memory. Day 48 marked a remarkable turn of events. It took me back to my first encounter with Kichai when I was an ogre and he was but a hobgoblin. That day, defeated and outmatched, Kichai felt the weight of our strength disparity. Yet rather than succumbing to despair, he was determined to elevate himself. He learned bear hunting, setting his sights on evolving into an ogre. Today, I witnessed his transformation, a new Kichai who stood taller and boasted a physique even more formidable than mine. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride in his achievements, so much so that I had to hold back from embracing him in sheer joy. My immediate thought was to fashion new clothes and armor befitting his newfound stature. As we engaged in conversation, discussing our shared experiences as ogres, I noticed something remarkable about Kichai's evolution. The fiery axe he held so dear now seemed imbued with divine energy, suggesting a divine blessing from a fire demigod. Additionally, his robust copper skin and steel-like muscles hinted at another divine intervention, possibly from the demigod of war. This meant Kichai had received two blessings during his evolution, an impressive feat, but also somewhat intimidating. I couldn't help but wonder if our paths would soon cross in a duel. But that's a story for another day. Following our previous interaction, I set out to craft new equipment for Kichai, my right-hand man. Just as I had anticipated, he soon approached me, eager for a friendly duel between ogres. His insatiable appetite for combat never surprised me, and in fact, resonated with my own dormant desire. I had longed for an opponent who could match my strength, and so, as a gesture of camaraderie, I readily agreed. The ensuing battle was anything but simple. Kichai's newfound strength was formidable. Every blow he delivered, despite my body's resilience and my skill that absorbed significant melee damage, felt like it could shatter my bones. It's crucial to note that while my evolution was well-rounded, dispersing status points equally, Kichai specialized in close combat. This meant that his points concentrated heavily on brute strength and resistance. Despite my combat experience, I had to acknowledge that Kichai had grown into a formidable opponent. The once seemingly insignificant goblin had transformed into a force to reckon with, truly deserving of his position by my side. Post-duel, as we recovered and celebrated his evolution, I crafted clothes and armor tailored for him. Given his increased strength, he could now wield his fiery axe with a single hand. I thought to equip his free hand with a sturdy shield, while I found one called the Mutilator in Velvet's Cave, which boasted enchantments like reflecting blows and increased durability. I decided to add my touch to it. For the armor, I used red bear fur and various materials from Velvet's Cave. The final look transformed Kichai into an imposing colossus, bearing both a shield and an axe. I continued to marvel at his metamorphosis. Subsequently, I turned my attention to daily tasks. I visited the imprisoned elves, guarded by the grandfather. Their racial superiority complex became evident, making them a handful for the old goblin. During this visit, I experienced a peculiar sensation, a voice or perhaps a shadow, communicating from within my mind. It was unsettling. Day 50 began with remnants of the previous night's eerie experience. It felt like a nightmare, but the memories were hazy, elusive. While I had an inkling that it held significance, I opted to set it aside. Daily routines beckoned, especially now that I had Kichai as my training partner. I reverted to the regimen I followed during my hobgoblin days. After a rigorous session, Gabumi spent time with me, and I later checked in with the girls in the kitchen and their goblin aides. The day, in essence, was typical, devoid of any major event, and concluded peacefully. On day 51, while I slept soundly, I awoke to my henchmen urgently beckoning me. Hurrying to the main room, I discovered an unexpected scene. 4 goblins had evolved into hobgoblins. Intriguingly, one of them demonstrated magical capabilities. Yet another named God Beauty, with cleric abilities, truly caught my eye. This gave me the idea to form a new unit named Myriad, with God Eugene leading. Although the potential of a unit of healers was immense, we have to wait for more cleric-evolving hobgoblins. For now, Gobidi sufficed. In addition, Sei had evolved into a Spell Lady Apprentice, a unique class accessible only to hobgoblins with magical tendencies. While her physical strength left much to be desired, the tattoos on her arms, reminiscent of mine, radiated immense power. Pondering the rapid evolutions within my goblin community, I remembered the grandfather's wisdom. Normally, a goblin's evolution into a hobgoblin takes years, yet many from my generation had achieved it surprisingly fast. Their rapid progression, I mused, might be a result of emulating me, along with the effects of consuming powerful beings, rigorous training, and regular hunting. As these thoughts swirled in my head, Sei approached, challenging me to a duel. I remembered her potent spell, Disaster Fire Rain, which she once used during a bear hunt. Although its initial usage consumed her energy immensely, her recent evolution had enhanced its efficiency and power. She unleashed it, directing more than a dozen fireballs skywards, preventing havoc below. Still, her mana reservoir seemed abundant, which confirmed the grandfather's earlier statements. Her current apprentice stage meant her powers were still budding. Upon her next evolution, she might become a formidable magical force. In recognition of her advancements, I presented her with an ancestral-class velvet robe and a staff I had previously acquired from a high-ranking magician. Later, the grandfather informed me that some of our elf prisoners were coming to terms with their captivity. One female elf even proposed her cooperation in exchange for freedom. I took this opportunity to remind the grandfather of his past misdeeds and warned against any mistreatment, to which he begrudgingly acquiesced. As for the female elf, I personally interacted with her. Contrary to my expectations, she seemed to take immense pleasure in our interaction. Amidst this, I recalled an enigmatic skill that had previously emerged, though its functioning eluded me. Deciding not to dwell on it, I resolved to wait, hoping its purpose would reveal itself when the time was right. On day 52, Kichai and I set out hunting together, my mind preoccupied with thoughts of the savory dishes the girls would whip up from our day's catch. As we ventured, I stumbled upon a group of my goblins. Recognizing them as Ken's former subordinates, I approached them, curious about their unusual gathering. Their expressions and words quickly relayed their discontent with my leadership, particularly my decision to prohibit their use of the women they'd brought. They lamented the loss of Ken's command, expressing a longing for the old ways. Determined, they declared their intention to leave, stating they'd rather face death than continue under my rule. Although their defiance could have been foreseen, especially given their loyalty to Ken, I respected their decision. I recognized the firm resolve in their eyes and understood their message loud and clear. Rather than trying to dissuade or restrain them, I bid them farewell, genuinely wishing them well. They are kin by race, and their departure saddens me, but they've taken nothing that isn't theirs and violated no rules, leaving me with no reason to hold them back. Hoping to slightly amend their negative perception of me, and as a token of goodwill, I unveiled 6 daggers crafted from a unique steel called mithril. Although devoid of magic, the sheer cutting prowess of this metal astounds, capable of slicing through other steel blades without a nick. To showcase its sharpness, I lightly grazed my finger with one of the daggers. Handing each of them a dagger, their bewildered expressions spoke volumes. Kichai and I then retreated from the scene, not once looking back. The possibility crossed my mind that humans might target them for these valuable weapons. Still, the choices they'd made set them on this lone path. And the blood I smeared on one of the daggers, that wasn't just for show. I trust you get my drift. On day 53, I ventured out, resuming my exploration after a hiatus. Encountering an orc brought back memories of the delectable taste of its meat. This particular orc dragged a gravely injured young human, presumably a novice adventurer. It seemed the orc intended to make a meal out of him. Acting swiftly, I put the orc down, and out of reverence for the young man's spirit, I cremated him. Then, I feasted on the orc, acquiring a peculiar skill, albeit at a basic level. Perhaps my lack of dedication hindered its advancement, for any being must nurture a skill to elevate it. Upon my return, I discovered 4 more elves had resigned to captivity, 2 of which were females. I then sought the alchemist for a new tonic. To my surprise, she offered a homemade alcoholic brew made from berries. Its taste left much to be desired, but it undoubtedly counted as alcohol. Elated, I declared a night of revelry. Day 54 started ordinarily, with the girls preparing meals. Their puzzled faces noted missing members, prompting me to explain the deserters' departure over disputes with my rules. I gave an open invitation for anyone else wishing to depart, guaranteeing no repercussions and even offering parting gifts. I then shared my vision and aspirations for our clan. With closed eyes, I spoke passionately, and upon opening them, found everyone intently listening, cementing their loyalty to me as their leader. Heartened, I wished all a prosperous future and rallied for collective effort towards our shared objectives. We ended the day with a celebratory toast and revelry. As Day 55 greeted us, I faced the immediate challenge of reorganizing our ranks to account for the vacancies left by the goblins. After reshuffling group assignments, I embarked on a routine hunting trip, the details of which aren't worth recounting. Back home, I tackled an important project I'd been pondering. I began by melting mithril ingots from the Velvet Cave and incorporated them into my silver arm. This unique arm of mine, with its ability to mutate, assimilated the mithril effortlessly. In a feat of alchemy, I could extrude solid mithril like whipped cream from my fingertips. I embedded this mithril into a gem made from my coagulated blood and performed enchantments on it. After countless repetitions, I successfully crafted telepathic earrings. Using my self-replication ability, I researched the earrings' potential impact. Their capability to facilitate telepathic communication among wearers was outstanding, promising enhanced combat tactics. I devoted the night to refining these earrings further. On the 56th day, having spent exhaustive hours perfecting the earrings, I assembled the entire clan to distribute them. With every member intently listening, I clarified that these unique earrings, once adorned, would become a part of their very flesh. Removing them would mean injury unless I personally did the removal. However, to offset this seemingly daunting commitment, I emphasized the earrings' beneficial enchantments, which would bolster their combat capabilities by enhancing strength and hastening minor wound recovery. As night cloaked the day and I felt fatigue's grip, my intent to retire for rest met a brief delay as Goblin and the redheads sought my attention, ensuring I settled into sleep only after addressing their concerns. Upon waking on the 57th day, memories of a peculiar skill acquired from the past orc encounter filled my thoughts. Deciding it was time to experiment, I beckoned Goblin, assembling our most formidable team for what they assumed was a conventional hunting expedition. Yet my true intent wasn't to hunt but to search for potential pets. Initially aiming to find black wolves as our companions, our prolonged search yielded no results. However, during a moment of reprieve, fortune favored us as we chanced upon a group of tri-horned horses. Displaying her newfound prowess, a result of countless hours mining, Goblin impressively felled one of the majestic creatures with her unique pickaxe. Observing these creatures, inspiration struck me. What if we tamed rather than hunted? Applying my monster-taming skill, I gently touched a horse, altering a portion of its cognitive function, transforming it from wild to docile. To our collective surprise, we discerned that these now tamed beasts could telepathically communicate with their human counterparts. The day's remainder saw us diligently seeking more of these horses and, opportunistically, some red bears too. Distributing our new companions, Goblin and Sato proudly took a horse each, while Kichai and Sei seemed content with their formidable red bears. With mutual excitement, we resolved to spend the upcoming day acclimating to and training with our new pets. As we returned, the news greeted us that several new elves had integrated into our clan, rounding off the series of eventful occurrences for the day. On the 58th day, my past life experiences surprisingly surfaced, revealing my adeptness in horsemanship and my history of horse riding. This prior knowledge smoothed my transition into mastering my new mount, a bear I fondly named Kuma-Jiru, or simply Kuma for convenience. While my companions grappled with their unfamiliarity with their mounts, Kuma and I embarked on a quest to find wolves. Eventually, we located a pack led by their alpha. To my astonishment, Kuma, despite his imposing size, displayed a speed that outmatched the agile wolves, easily cornering them. Recognizing Kuma's dominance and our clear strength disparity, the wolves instinctively adopted a submissive posture. I reinforced their newfound docility by employing my taming ability. Once home, these once ferocious creatures now exuded a charming allure that captivated our human female companions. I considered assigning these wolves as their guardians, ensuring both camaraderie and protection. The 59th day dawned with a pressing concern. The redhead, despite her sincere training efforts, lagged behind in combat expertise compared to her peers. Her absence from real combat scenarios accentuated this gap. Observing her distress, I felt compelled to personally mentor her, bridging her skill gap. With a wolf companion by her side, we delved deep into the forest, seeking genuine combat challenges. Initially confronting an armed raccoon, the redhead easily prevailed, compelling us to seek a formidable foe, the night vipers. Impressively, she single-handedly defeated 3 snakes. Our training escalated when we chanced upon 3 cavalts. To level the playing field, I immobilized them with my golden silk, and after some negotiation, we established a one-on-one duel system with the redhead. While she remained oblivious to our discussion, I briefed her, prepping her for the impending duels. In her inaugural duel, the redhead displayed commendable agility, compensating for her opponent's superior strength. The culmination was her decisive victory, striking down her Cavalt adversary. As she engaged her next opponent, I sought information from the restrained Cavalt regarding his clan's location. His initial defiance melted away when faced with a veiled threat, revealing the whereabouts of his kin. Their proximity piqued my interest, making me ponder over a potential visit when circumstances permitted. By the time I turned my attention back to the duels, the redhead had successfully defeated her second opponent. Without delay, I freed the third Cavalt, who, fueled by desperation, fiercely attacked her. Of the three, he proved the most formidable, yet she ultimately emerged victorious, albeit with several injuries. We allowed our pets to feast on one of the fallen Cavalts. As for the third, I initially considered indulging myself, but the redhead expressed an unexpected desire to taste its meat. I obliged, cooking it promptly. As we dined, I couldn't help but marvel at her evolving disposition. It seemed she was immersing herself more deeply into our culture, perhaps even contemplating a permanent stay amongst us. I sensed her unease and inquired about it. What she disclosed stunned me. She had assimilated a skill from the defeated Cavalt. The transformation was evident in her eyes, which now bore a monstrous hue and shape. Maintaining my poise, I probed her about the newfound ability. She identified it as Black Soldier. Grasping the nature of her power, I deduced she had met the two essential criteria: vanquishing a monster superior to oneself and subsequently consuming its flesh. Her metamorphosis was slightly unnerving. I couldn't help but wonder if she had once been a Casper, similar to my past self. Although I played a role in her evolution, I felt a mixture of responsibility and relief. The new strength and speed she acquired came at a cost. Black Soldier bearers must frequently engage in combat and ingest monster flesh. Failure to do so can lead to severe bodily degradation, even death. Her newfound power, while formidable, necessitated caution and care. Reflecting upon the day's events, I deemed it highly productive. The redhead later proposed a leisurely stroll, which I gladly accepted. As we wandered, I pieced together that Black Soldiers could augment their power by consuming parts of monstrous entities. The redhead's level had escalated to 34. As I pondered, I realized nearly 2 months had elapsed since my rebirth in this realm. The forest dynamics shifted with increased sightings of humans and elves. Recent encounters, including a confrontation involving my community's hunting group, attested to escalating tensions. My discussions with the cleric resonated with my suspicions. A potential war loomed between humans and elves. We wrestled with the reasons prompting such a conflict. Involvement would undoubtedly entangle us in the heart of this impending war, a prospect fraught with peril. Although aiding the elves appealed to me, aligning ourselves with them risked grave repercussions against humans. Such weighty contemplation proved mentally taxing. We agreed that maintaining our observer status would be the wisest course of action for the time being. As night descended, I observed the forest undergoing another transformation, a change occurring right before our very home on day 60. At around 2 in the morning, my persistent presence sensor jolted me awake. Focusing intently, I discerned a massive cluster of hostile entities lingering just outside our cave. My first assumption? Humans. However, the precision of my enhanced sensor revealed a different story. A large group of Cobbles was present, but to my alarm, they were rapidly being hunted and slaughtered by some other entities. Deducing the dire situation, I alerted everyone, thinking that the Cobbles might have come seeking revenge for the recent incident involving the redhead. I hastened outside, eager to grasp the unfolding scenario. It didn't take long for me to spot a multitude of Cobbles clashing with creatures I recognized from guarding Velvet's dungeons, an entire battalion of undead soldiers. Lost in thought, I failed to intervene in time, allowing the undead to decimate the Cobbles further. Swiftly rallying my army, I commanded a ranged assault, but our efforts proved fruitless against the undead's defenses. I instructed Gabumi to safeguard the injured and those unarmed. Meanwhile, my elite squad prepped for a direct confrontation. Our attempts with conventional weaponry met with little success, but fortunately, Hobby Soto made a vital discovery: the skeleton's vulnerability to blunt trauma to the skull. With this newfound knowledge, we began to turn the tide, but a pressing concern emerged. Rather than dwindling, the undead ranks seemed to swell. Then it struck me. I recalled a conversation with Carbuncle about a particular type of skeleton, the large skeleton, which could summon more of its kin harnessing Moon's energy. That must be the reason for their increasing numbers. I pondered over tackling the large skeleton directly, but then entertained another thought. Why not use this endless onslaught as training? If we could keep up with their numbers and exploit their weakness, it would serve as invaluable combat practice. I communicated this strategy to my team, emphasizing the importance of striking the undead in the skull. With our roles clear, a unique training session unfolded, juxtaposed with a battlefield atmosphere. As my team honed their skills, the human girls, previously merchants, approached, noting the commercial value of the skeletal remains. Adhering to their advice, I indulged in a feast of bones, collecting and savoring them. Although this experience endowed me with numerous skills, most proved redundant. One, curiously termed resistance to sunlight, perplexed me. Regardless, I humorously mused about its potential use, perhaps aiding me in avoiding a sunburn someday. 4 tedious hours elapsed, and the relentless battle with the skeletons was wearing on me. I could barely stifle my yawns amidst the monotony. Noticing the strain on my comrades as they kept the skeletons at bay, I decided to intervene and allow everyone some respite. Calling for a halt, I confidently set a time limit of 10 seconds for myself to eradicate the skeletal menace. Thanks for diving deep into this epic tale with me. If you've enjoyed our journey, be sure to smash that like button. Eager to discover what's next? Drop a comment with the word Goblin Quest and let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to be the first to witness the next adventure. Your engagement fuels the saga, so keep it coming. And until our next episode, keep those Goblin dreams alive.